critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn, and boy, what a show have we got for you today. This is the show where we strip the day's big talking points down to their bare bones and devour the red meat of pure debate as we focus on the stories that matter to you, wherever you're listening or watching from around the world. Well, the Conservatives have launched their manifesto, setting out what the party's plans would be should it win the election on the 4th of July. Polls suggest otherwise, but it's interesting to see what they say. And obviously that's dominated the headlines here in the UK. The SDP's also Social Democratic Party. They've also launched its manifesto for the first time, I think, in 37 years. And the Greens are launching theirs as we speak, I think, down in the seaside town of Brighton. We've got Labour's tomorrow, Thursday the 13th, and the SNP, Reform UK and Plaid Cymru will be releasing theirs in the next day or so. So it's time to shine a spotlight on some of the main party political policies. We're going to have a look at that. And I want to, as always, hear your views. Here's how you can get in touch.
Thanks for listening to us. Now we want to listen to you. Our lines are open from the U.S. and Canada. Call 1-888-201-6425. From the UK, call 033-0024-1026. And from Australia and New Zealand, call 1-800-670-310. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Yeah, do get in touch if you have any views on what you're hearing so far from the political parties. And indeed, if you want to talk about anything completely different, do let me know. Well, today I'm delighted that the Muckrakers is made up of me, Andrew Eborn, and my good friend Ben Habib, and also the TNT Titan, Johnny Vedmore. Now, Ben Habib is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. He's parliamentary candidate for Wellingborough and Rushden in the 2024 general election. Ben was basically elected to be an MEP in May 2019 for the Brexit Party, representing London. He founded and is CEO of First Property Group plc, an award-winning commercial property fund manager with operations in the UK and Europe. He started his career in corporate finance and at Shearson Lehman Brothers, I think it was, and he was educated at Cambridge University. And we're also joined by TNT top talent. We love an avalanche of alliteration. Johnny Vedmore. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's a great pleasure to be on.
It's a real thrill. I love the fact you brought along your chessboard as well, which is a great backdrop for you, Ben. It's So let's have a look. Let's unpack some of these things. Labour's on course, if you believe the polls, to win the national election on July the 4th, which basically gives Starmer's party, I think, a roughly 20-point lead over the ruling Conservatives. They clashed last week after Rishi Sunak said Labour would raise taxes by £2,000 per household if they took power. Labour are strongly rejecting that figure, saying it's all made up of whatever. But what I want to start with, let's start at the economic policies, because certain things have been announced. Both Labour and the Conservatives are committed to net zero carbon. Labour wants to decarbonise the power system by 2030, 5 years earlier than the Conservatives. And the Conservatives say they're going to meet their goal of reaching net zero by 2050, but without what Rishi Sunak calls unaffordable eco-zealotry. Now, the Tories maintain Labour's plans would cost £38.5 billion overall, and the biggest Labour spending commitment is this Green Prosperity Plan, which they've sort of costed about £19 billion over 4 years, and this includes Great British Energy, which would be a publicly owned company to invest in low carbon sources like offshore wind and nuclear power. Let me start with you, Ben. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I mean, net zero. First of all, I just want to say net zero is distinct from whether or not you believe in climate change and whether or not you think that steps should be taken to preserve the environment, improve it, and generally look after the planet. Net zero is the Paris Accord global response to the presumption that the climate is changing for the worse because of man-made carbon emissions. And I just want to say that because in itself, they're not synonymous, and people tend to regard the drive towards net zero as sacrosanct because it's synonymous in their mind with preserving the planet, and they're two very separate things. So if we can just set aside for the moment a debate on whether or not anthropogenic climate change is taking place, and just look at net zero. Net zero, as far as I am concerned, and in the context of the United Kingdom, is one of the daftest policies ever adopted. It has required the way it's being practiced is the turning of our backs on freely and naturally available gas in the North Sea, of which there is still a massive abundance. In the ideological pursuit of renewables, largely created and imported from China, where they've been manufactured, these large windmills manufactured in coal-fired power stations, have a limited life, sent across, don't produce adequate power, completely unreliable, and have actually added to the burden of consumer spending, because there are all sorts of subsidies to make them viable, which obviously come out of our back pockets. And in the pursuit of this ideological aim, we're also being taxed, green taxes on our fuel, VAT on our fuel, and so on and so forth. And what I would do, and what Reform UK's policy is to ditch net zero. This country produces less than 1% of the carbon emissions in the globe. Our abundantly available natural gas is actually a relatively clean fuel. And in 2019, the EU, no less, for all the Romaniacs who are watching this program, the EU, no less, was about to declare gas as a clean green fuel. And for reasons which are not entirely clear to me, it turned its back on doing so. What we should be doing in the UK is actually delivering a cleaner approach to the use of gas, then changing fundamentally our sources of energy. And that has been taking place anyway. Cars, internal combustion cars, are much less carbon emitting than they used to be. Hybrid cars are brilliant. Gas-fired boilers in your home are superb. People are all generally heading towards insulating their homes more. 70%, by the way, of carbon emissions come from urban areas, from buildings. And, we're well on the path to insulating our homes and doing the right thing. And there's a natural motive to do all of that. But it has to